The scream came first, sharp, panicked, and cut short like someone had pressed mute on the night itself. Sheriff Daniel Hayes was only 3 blocks away when the call came through the radio. Unit 3, we've got a possible homicide at Willow Creek Bridge. His tires hissed over the wet asphalt as he pulled up to the old wooden crossing that split the town in two. The fog coming off the creek swallowed everything below the waist, turning the world into a half-finished sketch. A single pickup truck stood with its headlights still on, one door open, engine running, and sprawled near the edge of the bridge lay a body, a young woman in a crimson coat, her hand outstretched as if she had been reaching for something. Or someone. Hayes didn't speak. He just stared at the streak of blood trailing toward the water, already washing thin in the drizzle. In a town of barely 3,000 people, a murder wasn't just a crime. Sheriff Daniel Hayes crouched beside the body, the beam of his flashlight catching the glimmer of rainwater on the victim's coat. The crimson fabric clung to her shoulders, darker near the wound just below the collarbone. She couldn't have been more than 25. No ID was visible, no purse, no phone. Just a silver bracelet on her wrist, and the faint scent of lilac perfume fighting the damp air. Deputy Claire Morrison arrived seconds later, breath visible in the cold. She pulled her hood back and glanced at the truck still idling a few feet away. Vehicle registered, she asked quietly. Hayes nodded toward the plates. Local, belongs to the Harrow family. Claire's brows furrowed. As in Mayor Paul Harrow, his son actually, Ethan Harrow. They exchanged a look neither wanted to unpack yet. The fog thickened, curling around the bridge rails like smoke from a dying fire. Beyond the creek, faint porch lights flickered in the scattered houses that made up Ridgewood Hollow. The town was the kind where people still left doors unlocked, where the sheriff knew every face by name, or thought he did. Hayes stood and approached the pickup. The driver's door was wide open, keys in the ignition, country radio still humming under the static. On the passenger seat sat a half-empty thermos and a folded jacket. No sign of struggle inside, no blood. Claire knelt beside the body, carefully lifting the edge of the coat. Single stab wound, she murmured. No defensive cuts. Either she didn't see it coming, or she knew who did it. Hayes scanned the surroundings, no footprints other than tire tracks and their own. The rain had already started wiping the scene clean like nature itself didn't want to remember. The radio on his shoulder crackled. Sheriff Hayes, coroner's 15 minutes out. Want us to notify state police? He hesitated. Ridgewood Hollow hadn't seen a homicide in 9 years. Not since the orchard killings that people still whispered about during storm season. Calling in the state now would turn quiet suspicion into headlines by morning. Not yet. Hayes responded, "Keep it contained until I have a name and a cause." Claire spoke without looking up. "If the truck's Ethan's, think he's our victim or our suspect?" Hayes pressed his lips into a thin line. "Right now, he's our missing link. And missing people worry me more than bodies." A rustling sound came from beyond the guardrail, where the creek sloped into shadows. Hayes drew his flashlight and stepped toward the noise, boots sinking into the mud. For half a breath he thought he saw movement, something or someone slipping behind the reeds. "Sheriff," Claire called. Hayes froze, the fog shifted again. Silence swallowed everything but the sound of water sliding beneath the bridge. He turned back just as the coroner's van lights appeared in the distance. Whoever had been there was gone. And the town would wake in a few hours not knowing a storm had already arrived. By the time the coroner arrived, the rain had settled into a steady drizzle, thin as breath and twice as cold. Dawn was just beginning to crawl across the sky, brushing the clouds with the faintest hint of blue. Hayes stepped back as the sheet was drawn over the woman's body, though his eyes lingered on the silver bracelet. Something about it nagged at him, familiar, but not from memory he could place. Claire snapped photos of the bridge, the truck, and the smear of blood that had nearly vanished into the planks. The coroner, Dr. Ira Collins, adjusted his gloves and crouched. "No wallet, no phone, no obvious signs of a fight," he said. Body temp suggests she died less than an hour ago. Hayes glanced at his watch, so sometime around 3:30. Dr. Collins nodded, maybe closer to 4. Cold water and rain complicate exact readings. His eyes lifted. You calling the state? Not until I have a name, Hayes replied, voice firm. From the end of the bridge, a car engine approached. A black SUV with gold trim. The sheriff let out a slow sigh. The mayor had arrived sooner than expected. Paul Harrow stepped out, raincoat thrown over his shoulders, a man with tired eyes and a politician's practiced calm. He took one look at the truck and froze. That's Ethan's, he said quietly. Where is he? Hayes met his gaze with care. We don't know yet. Is he home? Paul shook his head. No, he left around midnight. Told his mother he was meeting someone. Someone who? He didn't say. Claire approached, camera lowered. Mayor Harrow will need Ethan's recent contacts, any messages, and permission to search the vehicle. Paul exhaled slowly, shoulders tight. You'll have it. Just find him. Before the mayor could step closer, Hayes blocked him gently. There's a victim, young woman. We don't have an ID yet. Paul swallowed hard. Is she someone from town? Doesn't appear local, Claire said. At least not someone we immediately recognize. Paul's stare flicked to the covered body, then to the blood near the edge. His voice dropped. You think Ethan? Hayes cut in. I think someone wants us to ask that question. A deputy arrived with a clipboard. Sheriff, tire tracks end 10 yards back. No signs of another vehicle, just this one. Hayes nodded, but the lines around his eyes deepened. The scene felt staged, not sloppy but intentional, like someone wanted the truck found, the body seen. As the coroner loaded the stretcher, Hayes stepped aside and called the station. I want eyes out for Ethan Harrow. Issue a quiet locate request. No public bulletin yet. Claire closed the truck door and shut off the engine. The sudden silence made the world feel even emptier. Think she came here with him? She asked. Hayes looked toward the trees again, recalling the flicker of movement from earlier. If she did, they weren't alone. From somewhere across the creek, a dog began barking. 1, 2, 3 sharp barks. Then silence. Hayes eyed the fading fog. Checked the banks on both sides. Footprints, discarded clothing, anything. Claire nodded and headed down the slope with another deputy. Paul Harrow stood near the guardrail, staring at his son's truck like it might speak if he waited long enough. Daniel, he said quietly, if Ethan's in trouble, we'll find him, Hayes assured, but in his mind, trouble wasn't the worst possibility. Guilt was. Above them, the sky was turning the color of old paper, and Ridgewood Hollow was minutes away from waking up to the lie that nothing bad ever happens here. By 6:15 a.m., the body was gone, the bridge taped off, and the truck towed to the impound lot behind the sheriff's station. The fog thinned as the first porch lights blinked on across Ridgewood Hollow. News hadn't spread yet, but soon it would, and once it did, there'd be no containing it. Sheriff Hayes drove straight to the Harrow residence, a white Tousse, hoary house with a wrapped porch and a yard too well, kept to belong to anyone but the town's most powerful family. The lights in the front windows were still on, meaning nobody inside had slept. Linda Harrow opened the door before he could knock. Her face was pale, robe loosely tied, hair still pinned from the night before. Did you find him? She asked, skipping greetings, skipping breath. Not yet, Hayes said gently. Is his room how he left it? She hesitated, glancing over her shoulder. I think so. I haven't been in it. He stepped inside, wiping rain from his boots. Family photos lined the hallway. Ethan at 12 with a fishing rod. Ethan at 16 with a varsity jacket. Ethan at graduation, standing beside his parents. A life documented in frames, now shaking under questions. Upstairs, Deputy Claire was already searching. She stood near the bedroom window, curtains drawn open, notepad in hand. Ethan's room was neat, almost impersonal. Bed made, desk clear except for a laptop, charger, and a stack of mail. Anything? Hayes asked. Claire shook her head. No signs of struggle. no packed bag, no blood, but she held up a phone charger with no phone attached. He usually keeps his phone here overnight, according to his mother. Laptop unlocked. Yeah, screen was still on when I got here. Last activity around 12:47 a.m. Hayes crossed to the desk, scanning the open browser tabs, a local weather site, sports scores, and an email draft with no message in the body. The recipient field was blank. On the dresser sat the other half of the silver bracelet puzzle, an empty jewelry box, lid open, velvet interior shaped for a matching piece. Check his call logs if you can crack the phone, Hayes said. Claire nodded. Tech can try once we find it. Downstairs, Linda sat at the dining table, gripping a mug of coffee she hadn't touched. She looked up as Hayes entered. Daniel. Her voice was low but steady. Tell me the truth, that girl. Was she with my son? At this stage, we don't know the connection, he said, but we need the names of anyone he's seen recently. Friends, co-workers, anyone he might have met last night. She exhaled shakily. He works evenings at the Ridgewood diner, got off around 11, said he might meet someone after. Someone you recognized. She shook her head. He didn't say a name, just that it was important. Hayes paused. Did he seem worried? Linda thought for a moment, not worried, just distracted, like he was deciding something he didn't want to talk about. The front door opened then, and Mayor Harrow stepped inside, raindrops still clinging to his coat. His expression was hardened now. I've called in a lawyer, he said, in case this turns into something bigger. Hayes met his eyes steadily. If Ethan's innocent, a lawyer won't change what we do. If he's not, it won't help what's coming. Paul didn't react, but the silence afterward was louder than any argument. Claire appeared on the stairs, phone in hand. Sheriff, she said quietly, someone just used Ethan's debit card. An hour ago, gas station off Route 19. Hayes straightened. That's 15 miles out of town. Claire nodded, and the camera feed shows someone in a dark hoodie. Face isn't visible. Linda stood, one hand over her mouth. Was it him? We don't know yet, Hayes said. But in his gut, he knew something else. If it was Ethan, he wasn't running blindly. Someone was either guiding him or hunting him. The gas station off Route 19 sat like a forgotten outpost on the edge of nowhere. One flickering canopy light, 2 pumps, and a convenience store that sold more dust than groceries. By the time Hayes and Claire arrived, the rain had stopped, leaving the pavement dark and slick like polished coal. The attendant on duty was a lanky teenager with dark circles under his eyes and a name tag that read Trevor. He leaned over the counter as they entered, eyes widening slightly when he saw the badges. You the guys who called about the security tape? He asked. Hayes nodded. You saw who used the card. Trevor scratched his chin, didn't see much. Came in around 5 a.m. Pumped gas, grabbed a bottle of water, paid at the counter. Hoodie up, head down, didn't say a word. Claire stepped forward. Height, build, voice. Trevor shook his head. Didn't talk enough to guess the accent. Tallish, maybe 5'10". Slim, but the hoodie was big, so ought have been anyone. Hayes glanced around the store. Only one security camera sat above the register, its red light blinking. We need the footage from between 4 and 5. Trevor nodded and led them to a small back room with an old monitor hooked to a DVR box. He rewound the footage, fast forwarding until a figure appeared at pump 2. The hood obscured most of the face, and the camera angle caught only shadows where features should have been. The figure swiped a card, filled the tank of a dark sedan, no license plate visible from the angle, and walked inside, head down, hands in pockets, paid in less than 20 seconds, gone within minutes. Does that look like Ethan Harrow to you? Claire asked. Hayes studied the screen carefully. The build was close. The movement too familiar to ignore. Could be, he said at last, but that's not proof. Trevor hesitated, then added, there was something else. When he handed me the card, I noticed his hands were kinda dirty, like he'd been in mud or something. Hayes and Claire exchanged a glance. Mud. like the banks of Willow Creek. They left the station and stepped back into the crisp morning air. The sky had brightened, leaking sunlight through thin clouds. Birds were starting to stir in the trees, unaware of what the day carried. Claire folded her arms. If he drove that sedan, then where's his truck key? Why leave his own vehicle behind and use a different car? Hayes replied, because leaving the truck was part of what we were meant to find. Meaning someone's writing this story for us. Before Claire could answer, Hayes's phone buzzed. It was dispatch. Sheriff, we've got something at the impound lot. You'll want to see it. They drove back into town, wheels kicking up thin mist from the road. The impound lot sat adjacent to the sheriff's station, chain link fencing crowned with rusted barbed wire. A deputy waved them through and pointed toward Ethan's truck, now parked under a metal awning. What is it? Hayes asked. The deputy pulled out a small evidence bag. Inside was a folded piece of paper, damp along the edges but still legible. Found this tucked under the passenger side floor mat. Hayes opened the bag, carefully unfolding the note. 3 words were scrawled across it in hurried handwriting. She never left. Claire frowned. What does that mean? The victim? Hayes stared at the words, something cold sliding beneath his ribs, or someone else entirely. Before they could speak further, another call crackled through the radio, this time from Dr. Collins at the coroner's lab. Sheriff Hayes, you need to come in. We have an ID on the victim, and you're not going to like who she is. Hayes closed his eyes briefly. The quiet of Ridgewood Hollow was unraveling faster than he could hold it together, and somewhere out there, someone knew exactly why. Dr. Collins was waiting just inside the coroner's lab, arms crossed, glasses low on his nose. The white fluorescence overhead gave the room a sterile stillness, the kind that made every breath feel too loud. The victim lay on the metal examination table, the sheet pulled back to her collarbone. Her skin was pale, lips slightly parted, eyes closed as if sleep had simply taken a wrong turn. Hayes approached slowly. You got an ID. Collins nodded grimly. Prince came back fast. She's not a local. State database flagged her immediately. Claire stepped up beside the sheriff. Who is she? Collins hesitated before answering. Her name is Marissa Crowell. Hayes blinked. The name punched memory from a decade ago. Headlines, investigation, rumors. He hadn't heard it spoken in years. Claire frowned. Crowell, why does that sound familiar? Hayes answered quietly, because she disappeared 12 years ago from this town. Claire froze. You mean? Yes. She was 16, vanished without a trace. They searched the creek, the woods, abandoned barns, found nothing. Collins added, dental and scar records matched, and the bracelet on her wrist. It was listed among her belongings when she went missing. Claire's eyes widened. She's been gone 12 years. So where the hell has she been all this time? Hayes didn't answer. His gaze drifted to the stab wound, then the faint bruising along her wrist. Cause of death, the stab. Collins shook his head. No, the stab wound is fresh, but there are older injuries too. Faded scars on her back and arms. Different stages of healing. Some maybe months old. Claire swallowed. So she wasn't dead all this time. Someone had her. Collins nodded grimly, and that someone didn't treat her gently. Silence settled like dust. Hayes ran a hand across his jaw. Any family left in town? Only one, Collins said. Her older brother, Isaac Crowell, lives out near the old mill road, keeps to himself. Claire glanced at Hayes, think he knows she's back. Hayes shook his head. If he did, he didn't bring her to the bridge. Collins stepped to a counter and retrieved a small plastic bag. Inside was a scrap of fabric, torn and mud-stained. We found this caught under one of her shoes. Might be from where she was held or where she ran from. Hayes looked at it closely. The material was deep green, thick, like canvas. The kind used in old storage sheds or hunting cabins. Claire crossed her arms. Route 19's 15 miles out. Woods go deeper past that. Plenty of places someone could hide a person. Hayes exhaled slowly. We're not dealing with a single crime. Her death is the end of a different story. One that started 12 years ago. Before they could say more, another deputy appeared at the door. "Sheriff, you need to see this. The station just got a voicemail from Isaac Crowell." Hayes and Claire exchanged a quick look. "What did he say?" Hayes asked. The deputy's expression was uneasy. He said, and I quote, "I told you she wasn't dead, but now someone made sure she stayed that way." Sheriff Hayes and Claire arrived at Isaac Crowell's rundown house near Mill Road just after sunset. The sky was the color of bruised steel, and the trees around the property leaned like silent witnesses. The front door was unlocked. Inside, the air smelled of cedar and dust. Isaac sat at the kitchen table, hands clasped, eyes hollow but clear. He didn't stand when they entered. "I knew she was alive," he said quietly. "I could feel it, but no one believed me." Hayes remained calm. "How long has she been back?" Isaac's jaw tightened. 3 weeks. She showed up at night, thin, frightened, wouldn't say where she'd been, just kept repeating that someone promised to let her go. Claire stepped forward. "Did she name anyone?" Isaac hesitated, then reached into a drawer and pulled out an old photograph. It showed Marissa at maybe 14, smiling beside a boy slightly older than her, Ethan Harrow. Claire's heartbeat rose. They knew each other. Isaac nodded. More than that, they were close before she disappeared. People thought it was teenage nonsense. It wasn't. Hayes spoke evenly. "Are you saying Ethan was involved in what happened to her back then?" Isaac shook his head. "No, but his family was." Silence thickened. Isaac's voice dropped. The Harrow property used to stretch into the woods. The old storm shelter behind their barn. That's where she said she was kept when she was first taken. Someone moved her later, but that's where it started. Claire's breath caught. "You're sure?" She drew it. Isaac said, sliding a folded paper across the table. On the page was a rough sketch. A trapdoor, concrete walls, shelves with lanterns, and a bracelet, her bracelet, drawn on the corner. Hayes' mind raced. If Marissa escaped or was released after 12 years, someone panicked, someone with a lot to lose. Before they could speak again, the radio on Hayes' belt crackled. "Sheriff, we found the sedan from the gas station, abandoned near the old Harrow barn." Claire's eyes widened. He went back there. Hayes and Claire drove fast, Isaac following in his truck. The barn loomed against the darkening horizon, weathered wood and rusted hinges whispering of years gone wrong. They found the trapdoor behind a stack of cut logs. It wasn't locked. Inside, the air was stale, damp, colder than the world above. The lantern hooks were still bolted to the walls. Old restraints lay rusted in a corner. Scratches marked the concrete like fingernail carvings. And in the far corner, Ethan Harrow sat with his back against the wall, hands shaking, eyes red. A blood-stained knife lay several feet away. He didn't run. He didn't speak. Claire cuffed him as Hayes surveyed the room. Ethan looked up finally, voice barely a whisper. "I tried to help her, I swear, but someone saw us. Someone followed when she died. They left her on the bridge with my truck. I wasn't supposed to talk." "Who?" Hayes asked. Ethan's gaze drifted upward to the wooden beams. "My father." Claire went still. "The mayor." Ethan nodded, tears cutting through the dirt on his face. "He caught us." She threatened to go public, to tell what his brother did to her when she was a kid. He killed his own brother to keep the secret back then, but she remembered. Hayes clenched his jaw. So he made sure she never spoke again. Ethan didn't deny it. Sirens approached in the distance, growing louder. Back at the Harrow home, Mayor Paul Harrow was found packing a suitcase in the study. He didn't resist. He only said one sentence as he was led out in cuffs. She was supposed to stay gone. Please like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.